We're ready for our presentation. Tonight's event was organized and sponsored by Ahepa. And we wanted to, I have our Ahepan brother, George Horiates, is our chapter and community's past Supreme President of the Order of Ahepa. He's a member of St. Thomas Parish.
Father, happy birthday again to Mr. Arcanos Ratiadis, our parish council president, to all the parish council members. Thank you for allowing this group of Ahepa to have this community-wide event here. And thank you to each and every one of you who honor to the nation of Greece and the principles of Hellenism for being here. So, why are we here? It's the 250th anniversary of the United States of America, this young nation that we have, a quarter millennial old this year. And we thought it would be appropriate if we could do a presentation with regard to the American people's support to the Greek War of Independence. The Greek Revolution exploded in 1821. The ambivalence of the European powers had the Greek revolutionaries look to a more idealistic and rising power, the United States of America. The success of the American Revolution 45 years before was still fresh in Greek memories. The first news of the Greek Revolution appeared in the American press, in a Philadelphia newspaper, of course, in May 18th of 1821. And all greeted the Greek Revolution and described the possible fall, because victory was not ensured, of the Ottoman Empire as a good omen for the religious and political interests of the civilized world. The provisional Greek government asked for the establishment of diplomatic relations. At that time, the United States was advocating neutrality because the policy was that of the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine seeked to resist European intervention in the Americas, and the Americans were very scared to also intervene in foreign affairs. And that was led by ardent Philhellene Daniel Webster, who took up the issue. So, in the annals of the 18th Congress, in the Capitol building of ancient Greek Ionian architecture, Webster stated, "This magnificent edifice, these columns, with their stately proportions, this fine architecture by which we are surrounded, what are these but so many witnesses of what Greece once was and what she has taught us to be? Yet, sir, I have not introduced this resolution now on your table with any view towards repaying part of the debt we have in common with the civilized world, and we owe to that land of science, freedom, arts, and arms. It is a debt that can never be repaid. Whatever may be our feelings of gratitude towards these gifts, we're construed to act with a view alone to the present and the present state of the world and our relations in it. What I propose, or what I shall say, has reference to modern, not to ancient Greece, to the living and not the dead." However, despite his magnificent oratory of Daniel Webster, the United States again feared this entanglement, and now we started to get into what is these wonderful, wonderful people. You can hit it for me, by the way. We're going to have, that's Daniel Webster right here. That went back and forth in this age of enlightenment. You have to understand, 45 years before the revolution, we had this age of enlightenment. The world was coming out of the Dark Ages. And a man, a gentleman, a Greek, walks into an opera house in Vienna, Rigas Ophelios, and he starts hearing Mozart. And for someone of his ilk, from his understanding of what the Greek nation was, this was the kind of the Greek flame and the desire to be free. So with that, Daniel Webster continued his heroic and wonderful opportunities with regards to advocating for the Greek cause, in spite of the fact that the American government, so young, did not want to intervene. So, then we went to Thomas Jefferson and Adamatios Korais. And I have to tell you, these two have a wonderful exchange by and between the two of them with regards to the freedom of the people from the land of Themistocles and Leonidas. They continued their exchange. At that point in time, of course, Thomas Jefferson was no longer the President of the United States, but in fact the Secretary of State. And these letters that they had between them are historic correspondence. And actually, we have a copy, a serialized copy of one of those correspondences here at St. Thomas Greek Orthodox Church. So, and then you can hit it again. You see here, this is actually one of the correspondence that was going back and forth between Horiates and Jefferson himself. Again. Why Philadelphia? Philadelphia at the time came off of being the capital of the United States at its infancy, as well as, again, after the War of 1812, it was the seat of government. Greek fever caught America, and these wonderful Greek committees were created. These Greek committees were created. Now you have to understand, in colonial America, if you wanted to get an education, if you were lucky enough to get an education in colonial America, it consisted of a rigorous 3 to 4 year classical curriculum for wealthy white male students. And that classical curriculum had an emphasis on writing, reciting Latin and Greek. And why was Latin and Greek something that was so important to those individuals in the infancy of this country? And that's because what they wanted to do was be able to read the scriptures that they had in the other languages, as well as to read the classical texts of Greece. So, in Philadelphia itself, it was viewed as the title of Little or New Athens. It was viewed as Little or New Athens based upon its Greek name and based upon the desire of the individuals who had that classical training to be like the Greeks of the past, much like what Daniel Webster said. Anybody know what this building is? This building is the first bank of the United States. It's in downtown Philadelphia. Now this building, the first bank of Philadelphia, was, I guess you could say, Hamilton's bank. All right, and there was a big debate between Jefferson and Hamilton as to the monetary system that the United States would have. It's an edifice. It's on the, of course, the National Historic Registry. It's also the first Greek architecture in the United States. And with that, you can see the desire of these individuals to be like the ancient Hellenes, to be like the Greeks. This building, around the corner, and this is all in downtown Philadelphia, is the second bank of the United States. And I can just tell you right now, we live under a system that is basically from the second bank of the United States. And then at some point in time, someone shot Hamilton in North Jersey, but that's a different story for a different day. The second bank of the United States also, of course, is in Greek architecture, and it's not just the facade, it's the entire building. And that's used today as a museum piece. So you can see the desire of the people in the United States, the people that were trained in classical thought in Philadelphia, to be like the Greeks. It is from these buildings that the rest of the country decided to build in this unique style Greek architecture. Now, many of you may know that Boston was also called Little Athens, okay? Boston took that from Philadelphia. They took it from these two buildings. And everything that you see, whether it's in Washington, D.C. and or in New York, and of course up and down the Ben Franklin Parkway, and in Boston, those buildings are styled basically based upon the thought that originated in Philadelphia with these two buildings. So the seat of brotherly love, it was the seat of democracy in the New World, with the architecture, with the emphasis on the Greek language, and education. Okay, the European education immersed in Hellenism. So it was not solely historical, but the region had a very unique infrastructure for Hellenism. And this is one of my favorite slides. You may say, well, what's that have to do with anything? So with this slide here, number 9, so to speak, you see David Muir in the middle. That's ABC News. And ABC News is some kind of news that you can trust, right? My wife loves David Muir. So do many people here, right? She always likes to see David Muir on the TV, and she's disappointed when David Muir is not on and there's another individual that's covering the news. But you can see the news outlets of our day, whether it's UPI or AP or the other television stations, right? Those didn't exist when the Greek nation started, and those didn't exist during the term of the Age of Enlightenment. But they exist today. So what did they use back then? They used the Philadelphia Gazette. You can see up here we have some panels, just to show you a little more history. But that's called the United States Gazette. It was published in Philadelphia. And when there was major news, it would go by cable from France to London and then eventually to the United States. Sometimes it hit South Carolina. Sometimes it hit Boston, went up and down the East Coast. But the greatest, news outlet of the day was the United States Gazette in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And in this Gazette, we started to see some type of a policy that was developed. A policy that was developed with regards to first-hand accounts of the Greek Revolution. From Lord Byron to Dr. Samuel Ridley Howe, and it went worldwide, all over to the free world. And of course, Philadelphia was the most important piece of that circuit. We have many accounts, and it was the news of the day. When you took the newspaper, the talk of the day was with regards to the Greeks and their cause and their plight. The U.S. Gazette had so many different opportunities to make and just explain the horrors, the significant horrors that the Greeks were suffering. And this is one that was read on the floor of the United States Congress. And this is from December 24th of 1824. The cause of the Greek Revolution. Front page. This is the David Muir of its time. Perhaps no political extent has ever happened with a more remarkable nature and on which the world has more steadily fixed its attention than the late revolution of the Greeks. For a people oppressed for so many ages beneath the galling yoke of tyranny, cut off from all participation in the influence of the arts and sciences, together deprived of political security and even of liberties, and on the contrary, exposed to the insults and indignities heaped upon them by the barbarous oppression. For a people so understandably circumstanced to arise suddenly and at once and display that gigantic and undaunted spirit of freedom which has characterized the Greeks since the commencement of their revolution. It is a spectacle calculated to attract the united wonder and sympathy of surrounding nations. So this was when they started issuing these reports with regards to the Greek Revolution. It was designed to infuriate the public. It was designed to calculate. It was calculated because what the government couldn't do itself, it wanted other people to do, and it made a very, very nice cause of doing this. Another article, a Greek communication, again from the U.S. Gazette, perhaps no more remarkable nature. Many persons, no less celebrated for learning the political wisdom, have demonstrated that the barbarous hordes of the Turks have not only pretensions and pollute the sacred soil of Greece, and the Greeks themselves are fully entitled to be admitted into the rank of civilized and Christian nations. So that's before David Muir, right? And you can see it's a very famous painting. Some will call it iconography, but it's really not. It's with regards to the Greek Revolution, and these were the first correspondence we had. And one of the best correspondence that was published in the Philadelphia Gazette was on April 30th of 1826. It was by Dr. Samuel Ridley Howe. And Dr. Samuel Ridley Howe was one of the greatest Philhellenes of our times from the United States. Dear sir, imagine reading this when you woke up and open up the paper. I write you with an almost breaking heart. Miss Olongi has fallen. Her brave warriors have thrown themselves in desperation upon the bayonets of their enemies. Her women and children have perished in the flames of their own dwellings, kindled by their own hands, and their scorched and mangled carcasses lie a damning proof of the selfish indifference of Christian world. Christian, do I say? Alas, I fear Christianity has fled from the world. You send, and this is again a commentary against the United States government, you send missionaries to the east and to the west and from pole to pole. Millions are annually paid of over-endowed institutions, while the Greeks, the poor Greeks, are left to worse than slavery and death. For 10 months have the eyes of Christian Europe been turning upon Miss Olongi. They have seen her inhabitants struggling at enormous odds against the horrors of war and famine. Her men worn out, bleeding and dying. Her women gnawing the bones of dead horses and mules. Her walls surrounded, yelling for the blood of her warriors and to glut their hellish lusts upon her women and upon her children. All this they have seen and not raised a finger for her defense. And at last they have seen the catastrophe. You may talk to me of a national policy and the necessity of neutrality, but I say a curse upon such policy. It is contrary to Christianity and humanity. It is a disgrace to our age that 2 million Christians should be left to the saber and yoke of the Turk. Pardon me, perhaps my language is too strong, but when I think of Miss Olongi, when I think of the protracted sufferings of her inhabitants, many of whom I knew, I cannot restrain my feelings. Greece is in imminent danger, but I do not yet despair. If she falls, be assured, it will not be without a struggle. I shall have an opportunity of writing you again in a few days, and then give you a more correct opinion on the probability or improbability of her success. Till then, adieu, Samuel Ridley Howe. And I have to tell you that these first-hand accounts, as colorful and detailed as they were, continued unabated all up and down the East Coast. Go ahead. Where's Philadelphia continued to step in? This wonderful man. The Greek committees were not led by Greeks. The Greeks were not here, right? They were enslaved. They were dying. They were bleeding, as they said. It was the Irish Americans. The Irish Americans were the ones that started the Greek committees. They were people that came from political oppression. They were people that came from religious persecution. And in Philadelphia, the greatest leader of the Greek committees was Matthew Carey. Matthew Carey was an individual who started the Greek Committee of Philadelphia. You had Greek committees in Philadelphia, you had them in Boston, you had them in New York, you had them in Washington, D.C. And you even had them in other towns, smaller towns like Wilmington, Delaware, Bristol, Connecticut, and Springfield, Massachusetts. Matthew was an individual who actively solicited funds and materials and supplies and food to be taken to Greece for the Greek cause. Just out of Philadelphia alone. I can't tell you how many millions of monies were put forth with regards to, there's different figures that are out there, but these are arguments of Matthew Carey that went to the national newspapers. And from there, these Greek committees would then raise the funds and then send them to the Greek Committee of London. And then from there would convert it in silver, and then from there they would be able to buy arms for the Greeks. What is Fort Mifflin? Have you guys been there? Yeah. So, Fort Mifflin is the site of the First Marines. The First Marines of the United States were based in Fort Mifflin during the Revolutionary War. During the Revolutionary War, they were stationed there, and they were charged with defending Philadelphia as the British were coming to the Atlantic Street. Fort Mifflin had its own flag, and the charge was to completely prevent them not only from reaching Philadelphia, but they didn't want the British to keep going to Valley Forge where Washington was stationed. Okay, so in Philadelphia again, at Fort Mifflin, in the city, okay, we have this wonderful man called Samuel Miller. Samuel Miller was the commander of the 1st Marines in Philadelphia. And as this slide shows, and this is again from the newspapers, right? He writes here, "My dear sir, feeling in common with others for the unparalleled distresses of the brave Greeks and the sensible of increasing exertions of your committee to raise funds, I cannot permit the opportunity to pass without contributing in conjunction with the officers and men attached to my command some slight aid towards accomplishing so noble a purpose. I take pleasure, therefore, in enclosing a check on the Philadelphia event for $72.50 derived from the following sources." And they talk about which, the lieutenant, $10, 12 sergeants, $11.25, private soldiers, $30, and then, because people were throwing money, they were giving money so willingly in Philadelphia, this gentleman, this Commander Miller of the 1st Marine Barracks in Philadelphia, continues to write, "I am aware how small the sum may appear in comparison with the necessities of the occasion, but trust it will not be less acceptable from the circumstance of being the soldier's mite." A soldier's mite was recognized as a mite on not the great salary that they would have. And how did they raise these monies? When these 1st Marines came to Philadelphia, they were stationed there, Commander Samuel Miller said to each and every one of them, each time you go out into Philadelphia to have a drink, the first drink you're going to have, you're going to give me the money here, and that's the money that you're going to raise for the Philadelphia Greek Committee, for the Greek cause. So if you were a soldier and a Marine in the 1st Barracks of Philadelphia, you had to give your first drink up to the Greek Corps of Attendants. And he says here, should it contribute in any degree, however small, to alleviate the sufferings of the oppressed inhabitants of the land of Themistocles and Horiates, the feelings which have dictated the contributors will in a high degree be gratified. Yours truly, Commander Samuel Miller. And that's something that is really amazing, really outstanding. We have previously did a couple of pieces with regards to that fort that's there. I highly recommend that you visit it. And you can still see today the actual office, the actual apartment, so to speak, of Commander Samuel Miller. So, again, humanitarian aid shipments. Well, I wasn't there, but neither was Machiavelli Sarato. But I can tell you that these fundraising appeals just continued, and Americans from all walks of life started to give monies, and these monies added up, and they were publicized in a newspaper each and every day, a laundry list. We're going to get into that. And even the clergy played also an important role. Is father still here? Was he still celebrating? Father, I want you to know, in many towns, preachers went out to their communities. Again, this is not Orthodox communities, right? These are the communities of the United States at the time. Right? Made Philharmonic speeches after services and called the faithful to collect money for their brothers, the Greek Orthodox Christians. Here at Penn's Landing in Philadelphia, there were 8 shipments that went to Greece during the war itself. 2 of those shipments went from Philadelphia, another 2 came from the Baltimore area, another 2 from Boston, another 2 from New York. The boats that came right around the place where we're standing, okay, Maki is dressed in colonial wear, and I'm probably wearing a suit from, thank God it's not the same suit. But anyway, so the Tontine and the Levant were the 2 boats that were sent from Philadelphia. And those 2 boats were sent full of provisions for the distressed Greeks. Those 2 boats were also escorted, although there's no records to indicate it. The books do say it, They were escorted by the USS Constitution, Old Ironsides. This was a boat that is very famous in the American War of Independence, and it, under night, without anybody knowing, escorted these boats so they wouldn't get picked off on their way to Boros to unload, so to speak, these provisions. The Greek ball and fundraisers throughout America. So we talked about the clergy. I have to tell you that even at the Masonic Hall in Philadelphia, they had a fundraiser. They had people who had theaters, and they were asked to give a percentage of their receipts to the Greek War of Independence in Philadelphia. And it just continued on and on. Women sewing, clothes, things of that nature. The greatest fundraisers were those balls that they had, and this is why we have these kind of standing slides. What do you call these slides? What do you call these things? Posters? Posters? Something like that, right? So, when you went to a Greek ball fundraiser, and those Greek ball fundraisers were in Philadelphia, they were in New York, they were in other major cities too. You always walked into the room, and the father of the country, George Washington, there was a large portrait of him on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, when you walked into these balls to benefit the Greek cause, was General Lafayette, another Philippine. The Park Theater in 1827 had the largest Greek fundraiser itself. An amazing amount of money was put forth at the Park Theater. And it continued on. When you walked in the room and you saw the portrait of Lafayette, and you saw the portrait of President Washington, the father of our country, those were always adorned with what they called cornucopias. Right? It's not an Indian word, right? That combination of, vegetables and fruits that's on top, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's put together. That represented that the cause of Greece was the cause for all. So it represented more than just, fa'i, let's put it that way. It represented that this was something that was supposed to be, a plentiful, with regards to these, and they were always on that side. The Greek cross was always put forth in these Greek balls as well, because there was something of I guess you could say, this wonderful issue that had happened with regards to this cross. In Brooklyn Heights, New York, at the time that these Greek committees were being formed, an anonymous person built a rather large Greek cross. And there was a large notation underneath this ridiculously large cross. And the notation indicated that, may the Grecian cross be placed from steeple to steeple until it rests upon the dome of Hagia Sophia. So this understanding, this getting the word out, not by David Muir, but by the newspapers and by first-hand accounts, was truly kind of catching a Greek fire, so to speak, in the United States. And you always had the Greek cross there. You also have this wonderful, I guess you say, saying, motto of the American Revolution, right? And that was Patrick Henry. And that was the motto that was always at the Greek ball itself. Liberty or death. Give you liberty or give you death, right? So the Age of Enlightenment was not just the American Revolution. It went from the American Revolution to the French Revolution, and then to the Greek Revolution, 45 years later. So I can't say that Eleftheria y Thanatos came just from the American Revolution. In fact, it came from the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Okay? The motto of the Greek War of Independence was based upon Patrick Henry. It was based upon the starting of the Age of Enlightenment. In France in 1793, you may have heard, if you haven't heard, you haven't been to a hockey game. Anyway, the French motto, so to speak, even today is Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité, right? The French Foreign Legion and things of that nature liberty, equality, and fraternity. In reality, during the Reign of Terror, during the French Revolution, this motto also included a suffix to it, and that was ou la mort, or death. Give me liberty, or give me death. And at some point in time, the French removed, the death part of it because that was, they had mass executions of the French Revolution as well. So the letterie thanatos came from the American Revolution, then went to the French Revolution, and that money into the Greek fund. And then they would give a report, a financial report, right, afterwards, after each collection, to tell you what's in the bank, what's on hand, okay, what articles of food were provided, and they would give subtotals. And this happened each and every day during the existence of these Greek committees throughout the course of the war, once they found out about this. Well, unfortunately, I can tell you that there were many orphans from Greece as a result of the massacres that were occurring. And this is Garifalia's story. These were people that were brought over to the United States on brigs, and they were taken in by missionaries of the United States. Garifalia Analbi, a female Greek child, age 12, has arrived at Boston in the brig Suffolk from Smyrna and has been taken into the family of a gentleman of that city. Her freedom, with that of her two sisters, were purchased from the Turks by a gentleman of Boston. Two of the sisters were taken by Europeans who have made provisions for their education. The father and mother of these Greek children were murdered at Skidoo, and the children were carried to Smyrna and sold. So a lot of the churches at the time had these missionaries that were involved in trying to bring these orphans back to the United States and to other points in an effort to save them, even though they came from broken homes, their parents had been slaughtered, and many of them were slaughtered as well. And that continued on, unfortunately. How do you guys like it so far?
Great.
Water of Brazil.
That'll get fun.
The 8 cent to Greece in cash or in kind was approximately $80,000 in 1827, $60,000 in 1828, and of course substantial amounts in those times, right? For perspective, the amount in today's dollars equate to approximately $5 million, and that was just from those few fundraisers that we indicated from Philadelphia. This justified the gratitude of the first governor of Greece and the Federation, and I believe our Philopoulos have publicized the letter of, and the movie, I should say, about Ioannis Kapodistrias. Ioannis Kapodistrias was so overwhelmed by the support that was given by these Greek committees, including, of course, the greatest of those, Philadelphia. And the letter that he wrote to the United States President John Quincy Adams, bear that in mind. He said, on May 5th of 1827, Your Excellency, Mr. President, the President of the General National Congress of my nation has just transmitted to me a letter addressed to Your Excellency, in which he expresses the sentiments of gratitude for which the liberal conduct of the American nation that has filled the nation over which he presides. I deem myself exceedingly happy to have been selected as the organ of this communication, and I pray God, the protector of America and Greece, to afford me in future other opportunities of witnessing the reciprocal sentiments of two nations, to one which I belong, and to the other the sentiments of my admiration and the homage of my gratitude. I take pleasure in availing myself of the honor afforded me by this opportunity of presenting to Your Excellency the homage of my own sentiments of profound respect. Your Excellency's most humble and devoted servant, Count Kapodistrias, the first governor of Greece. Some of those other missionaries also brought many of the orphan children. I saw one of my Hilti friends there. Orphaned Hilti children were brought on the brig Cyprus. 3 Greek youths left Smyrna on the Romulus. Others followed. Even the family of the governor of Massachusetts, Thomas Winthrop, adopted an orphan girl. These children were educated in America under the auspices of American missionaries, and many returned to Greece as educated professionals. The unquenchable Philhellenic fever of America led to many Americans being involved in the struggle for Greek independence, and at least 3 of them lost their left breath in Greece. George Jarvis, an American diplomat, was the first American to arrive in Greece. He landed in Hydra in April of 1822. To the Greeks, he was referred, George Jarvis, as Captain Yorgos Zervis, the American. As soon as he set foot in Hydra, he threw away his Western clothes. He donned a Klephtic Greek outfit with fustanella and learned to write and speak Greek. He fought with Kolokotronis in Tripolitsa, where he was seriously wounded, as well as Karaskakis and Roumeli. He wished to be considered a true Greek and the son of his true homeland, which had embraced him as its true mother. He died on August 11th, 1828, and was buried in Argos with the high honor of Lieutenant General. Jonathan Miller, without money or other means, had his travel expenses paid for by the Greek Committee. For his outstanding courage in battle, he earned the Greek nickname, the American Daredevil. He began his military activity as a captain, and by the time he left, he was promoted to colonel. We talked about Samuel Ridley Howard, and I can't stress to you how much this wonderful person, he did come from Boston. In 1824, he received his doctorate of surgeon degree